Chapter 12. A Small Problem. "Billy!" I screamed. "Don't! It's me, Rod!" Which shows you how addled I was at that point. To begin with, despite everything that had happened, I was still thinking of BKR as Billy Becker rather than a desperate interstellar criminal. For an instant, I even thought he actually believed I was a bug. Then I realised it was just his sick sense of humour in operation. It's amazing how much can go through your head when you see death hurtling at you. Billy's hand was inches from my head, a microsecond from turning me into a grease spot on the rug, when he screamed and twisted sideways. The Furkel had struck again. "Damn you, Gracker!" cried Billy. He was now lying on the floor and clutching his hand. I figured this wouldn't last. He would be on his feet soon. I wanted to be far away from him by the time he was. If you've ever tried to catch a mouse or a cockroach, you know that tiny things can move pretty fast. I proved it now by moving faster than I had thought possible. Soon I was going so fast that I started to fly, which has been one of my favourite fantasies for as long as I can remember. It didn't take long to realise I wasn't flying because I was running too fast. I was flying because the ship had caught me in the orange beam it had used to suck up Gracker and the others. When I was about 2 feet off the floor, BKR roared and lunged at me. I tried to twist away, but the ray had me in its grip. I couldn't move. Fortunately, the ray was faster than Billy. He flashed underneath me as I was lifted into the ship. "Get us out of here, Phil," I heard Gracker command as the doors slid shut beneath me. I felt the ship accelerate. Then suddenly, we came to a full stop. "He's got us!" cried Madame Pong. "Full reverse blasters," ordered Gracker. "Aye, aye, Captain," said a voice that I recognised as belonging to the potted plant. A roar, a scream from BKR, the ship shot forward, and we hurtled through a window without breaking it, mostly because it had already been broken when the Furkel flew in. When we were free of BKR's house, Madame Pong came to stand beside me. I felt like she had gotten taller, even though I knew the opposite was true. The fact that the ship's furniture was the right size added to the illusion. After all, it was easier to believe that the furniture was full size than to believe that at that moment I could fit inside my mother's coffee cup. "Are you all right, Rod?" Madame Pong asked, a worried look creasing her yellow face. "I'm not sure." "He's probably in shock," said Tar Gibbons. The four-legged alien walked over, put an orange-ish hand on my forehead, and stared at me with googly eyes. My first thought was that this was no way to make me feel better. Then, oddly, I did start to feel better. "Are you casting a spell on me?" I cried, flinching away from his hand. "Don't be silly. I'm simply easing some of your tension." "How?" Madame Pong shook her head. "Don't ask. It's even more complicated than trying to explain how gender works on Tar Gibbons' planet." "Pshaw, madame," said Tar Gibbons. "It's not complicated at all. I'm working at the subatomic level to alter the electron flow affecting young Rod Albright's endocrine system and causing him feelings of fear. Nothing mystic about it. It's basic warrior science." Suddenly a furry creature went scurrying past me. Except for the fact it was blue, it looked like a cross between a cat and a monkey. "What was that?" I cried. "Plink," said Madame Pong. I wasn't sure if the word was the name of the creature or simply a flaw in her language program. "Plink?" I asked. "He's Phil's assistant." "Symbiote would be a better word," said Tar Gibbons, "since the two species co-evolved." Turning to me, it added, "Plink is the moving half of the partnership. He runs and fetches for Phil. In return, he gets to eat any leaves, branches, and nuts that Phil is done with." Tar Gibbons must have seen the look on my face, because its eyes got bigger, and it added, "Biology is strange and wonderful, and not subject to moral judgment, young Rod Albright." Before I could answer or ask the tar why it kept calling me young Rod Albright, Plink went scooting back in the other direction, carrying something that looked like the interstellar version of a monkey wrench. The little animal zipped through a door into what looked to be the cabin of the ship and stopped. I couldn't see Phil, but I did see a long green tendril unroll and lift the wrench out of Plink's paws. "Would you like a tour of the ship?" asked Madame Pong. "Yes, please," I said. "But what about BKR?" "He'll be after us soon, I imagine, but there's not much I can do about it. That's Gracker's job. I am the diplomatic officer for the ship, and right now I am offering my services." "But shouldn't we do something?" "Action taken without thought is like giving an egg a navel," said Tar Gibbons, blinking and waving its long neck. "Is that supposed to mean something?" I asked. "It should, unless this ding-butted language program is malfunctioning again." It turned to Madame Pong and said in a cranky voice, "Can't you do something about the quality of the equipment they give us?" Putting her hands together, she made one of her little bows. "I shall do my best," she said quietly. Walking around behind him, she gave him a solid whack at the back of his head. "There," she said. "That ought to take care of it for the time being." "Thank you," said the tar. Reaching for my hand, Madame Pong said, "Come, Rod, let me show you the ship." Now that I was 2 inches tall, the Furkle was in perfect proportion to me. Except in one case, each of the aliens had his, her, or its own room. Madame Pong didn't show me all of them, but she did open the door to her own room, which was slightly larger than my own bedroom. Sheets of gauzy fabric in colours ranging from pale yellow to a purple so deep it was almost black hung from her ceiling, making the room look as if it were filled with a rainbow mist. "Walk in," she said, gesturing toward the door. The fabric trailed over my skin as I entered. It tingled and tickled, as if it had the tiniest electric current running through it. "This feels weird," I cried. She smiled, made one of her tiny bows, and simply said, "I am happy in this room." Next she showed me Phil's room, which, not surprisingly, was something like a jungle. "Phil is on a quest for his roots," said Madame Pong in a hushed voice. "This is a holy endeavour, and we are privileged to have him with us. When he is not working, he often comes here to be alone, and to turn over a new leaf." I started to laugh, then realised that I had no idea whether she was joking or serious. Since I was a guest and didn't want to offend her, I didn't ask. I just put my hands together and made a tiny bow, which seemed to please her. "Because of his vows, Phil considers his room to be open to all when he's not inside it himself. The room shared by Gracker and Snout is private. However, if Tar Gibbons has no objections, we can see his personal space." "That is amazingly all right," said Tar Gibbons, stretching its neck so its head came over my shoulder, startling me a little. Tar Gibbons' room was actually a pond with a large rock in the centre. A thick mist hovered in the room, and little squeaking sounds filled the air. "Lovely, isn't it?" asked Tar Gibbons, who stood next to me at the door. Before I could answer, a small winged thing flew past. Almost faster than I could see, a hand shot forward. Grabbing the winged thing out of the air, Tar Gibbons popped the creature into its mouth. "I grow my own snacks," it said cheerfully, crunching as it spoke. "How ecological," I replied. Madame Pong was showing me the recreation room, which had a wall-sized viewing screen and shape-shifting furniture, when Gracker's voice filled the air. "All crew members to the main deck at once. That includes the Earthling deputy. Emergency alert. I repeat, emergency alert." "Oh dear," said Madame Pong. "Come along, Rod." I followed the 2 aliens to an elevator, which was really just a tube. The 3 of us crowded in, the door closed, I heard a whoosh, and the next thing I knew, we were in the ship's control room. Gracker was sitting at a console filled with lights, buttons, balls and levers, all of them marked with labels. At least, I assume they were labels, written in a language that didn't look like anything else I had ever seen. Snout stood at his shoulder, eyes closed, as if concentrating on the infinite. Across the room, Phil floated in front of a wall of mechanical devices. The light from his main blossom was focused on a row of switches, and his leaves were waving in an agitated fashion as he used several tendrils to manipulate the controls. "What is it, Gracker?" asked Madame Pong as we entered the room. It was Snout who answered. His voice was solemn. "I have been running some calculations, and I have anticipated BKR's next move." "And that is?" prompted Tar Gibbons. "He will kidnap someone from Rod's family." "This is terrible," I cried. "We have to stop him." "It's worse than you can imagine," whispered Madame Pong. Glancing at her, I was horrified to see that she had actually turned white. "What do you mean, it's worse than I can imagine? What could be worse than BKR kidnapping someone from my family?" Tar Gibbons' eyes had sunk back into his head. The pupils were like tiny points of blackness. "We haven't yet told you the nature of BKR's crime,"